Hi everyone, welcome to the Manchester Power BI user group. For those of you who don't know me or wonder who I am, my name's Chris Ingman. I work alongside Alex Taylor. Alex normally runs the Power BI user group, so I look after the business intelligence and data team over at Robert Walters on the permanent side, and Alex is my counterpart on the contract side. Now, Alex is actually on paternity leave at the moment. His wife gave birth to a little girl last week, so as you can imagine, his hands are pretty tied at the moment. He definitely would have wanted to join, but I don't think he physically can. So he's drafted me in to do a brief intro, a bit about us. So we, like I say, Robert Walters, we're a recruitment company. Me and Alex, we both specialise in the BI and data space. So that data analytics, data science, big data, data engineering, you name it, we tend to work on it. So if you're in the market for a new job at the moment, or alternatively, you just want to either build out your team or just find out a bit more about what the market's like, just feel free to get in touch with either me or Alex. Now today, here's a brief overview of our session. So we're joined by Marnix Jansen. He'll be providing a talk on what is Tabular Editor, and he'll be followed by James Reeves, who will be providing his tips and tricks on Power Query. And obviously, if you have any questions throughout, feel free to put them in the chat box, and we'll be doing a quick wrap up. And again, we'll exchange questions at the end. Now, before I hand it over to the guys, just a bit about the user group. So we've been going now for about 4 or 5 years, give or take. In that time, we've had about 50 physical meetups, and it's now the largest of its kind outside of London, the second largest in the country. We have about 3,000 members on Meetup and about, I don't know, 7,000 or so on LinkedIn. So we've been going for quite a while. But basically, it's a good opportunity for all people who are interested in Power BI or experts in Power BI to learn new things, to share your own best practices, provide practical takeaways, real world success stories, tips and tricks, you name it. And when it's a physical event, obviously it's a good opportunity to get to know each other. We normally provide beers, pizza as well. So hopefully we'll have a few more physical events in the near future, but at the moment we'll have to just make do with the webinar session. And here are a few testimonials. I think Alex may have actually wrote the first one, best tech user group in the UK, but other than that, as you can see, we're actually rated 4.6 out of 5, so on Uberstyle, so it's going really well at the moment. So that's all from me, really. So what I'll do is I'll pass it over to Shep, who will introduce the guys. Shep, stop sharing content now.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you very much. Hi everyone, thanks for joining us here on the Manchester Power BI user group, March 2021. Let's have a look here. Where's my video? Okay, I'm going to share my screen just to introduce our special guest for this evening. Okay. Ben, just give me a shout when you can see my screen and everything's okay.
I can see you, mate, but let's just see if we can get your screen on there. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Awesome. Yep.
Yep, looking good.
Cool. Well, let me just back up a second. When you've got a number of screens here. Right, okay, here we are. Marnix Jansen, hopefully I've pronounced that properly, but Marnix is a business intelligence specialist, and he supports organizations by transforming raw data into insight. And let's be honest, a specialist in that area, really should specialize in being able to transform that raw data into really intelligent sort of insight. And following Marnix and his sort of background, he's managed to do that throughout his sort of work history, and really specializes in sort of data and information systems. He's a certified expert in the field of analyzing and visualizing data with Excel and Power BI, so some of the certifications that you can get out there as well. He likes his programming in R, SQL. He's probably done some VBA, M and DAX. I mean, we've got Power BI, but in Power BI we have DAX, we have Power Query, we have M code, and so they almost like they want us to carry on learning all these different sort of languages more and more. And Marnix is going to show us how we can sort of simplify all that with Tabular Editor coming up in a minute. So if I can ask Marnie to say hello and introduce yourself. Marnie, are you there?
Sure, I am. Shall I
Hi.
go? Hi. Shall I
How
go
you
ahead and share my screen with everyone already?
Yeah, let's go. Yeah,
Sure.
do it. And then Ben can share that with you. But how are you doing today?
I'm doing excellent. Yes,
Yeah.
thanks for having me again. So I've
Good.
been here for a couple of months, well, probably a little over a year ago, first time speaking on evaluation context in DAX. And yeah, I'm glad to be here again and to speak on Tabular Editor this time.
Yeah, well, it's good to have you back. And Tabular Editor, along with some of the other external Power BI tools, are really quite useful when you start using them, aren't they?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I've sort of touched on them recently as well. I can see really the sort of benefits from them as well, and what's coming through. And so I'm really excited to sort of see what you've got to show us today. I'm sure everyone watching at home is the same as well. So yeah, if you're ready, Ben, is his screen ready to share?
It is now. Yeah, we can see it. And what else would I say? Of course, external tools has just been released as a feature in Power BI Desktop, I think in March anyway. So it's gone from preview to being live. So you expect to see a lot more of these external tools embedded in the Power BI experience.
Sure.
Yeah, definitely. Right,
Well,
over to you, Marnie.
Gotta appreciate how Microsoft is modest enough to admit that there are some holes in the Power BI proposition, if you will, and so they allow for the community to fill those holes with external tools like DAX Studio, Tabular Editor. Well, there are a couple more. So today, yeah, we're gonna focus on Tabular Editor. I have a dashboard on my screen now, and I want to start off by showing you the result. Okay, so I want to start off by just giving you a feel for what it is that we want to work towards. So this is just a simple basic sales dashboard. So I set this to sales right now. So all we got here is simply our sales figures, right? So just the development of your sales, your month sec numbers. What I'm able to do on this same chart is also see the year-to-date number. And we'd obviously see this gradual increase, month-to-month numbers, but also be able to toggle between sales and units sold. Okay, so all on that same chart. So this is going to save a lot of space on your report, of course, and so there are many different scenarios where you want to use this technology. And so we're going to go ahead and show how this is done in Power BI using Tabular Editor, of course. So let me go ahead, and I need to bring in a little bit of dummy data in order for this to work. Power BI, what are you going to do with Power BI with no data? It doesn't do much. So here I got just some financial sample data, which I'm going to load into Power BI. Don't need to do any Power Query. I'm going to see a lot of Power Query after my session, of course. So here goes. So now I'm going to start off by just creating that chart, right? Well, first things first, what I need here, I do have a date field, but I do not have a date table yet. So what I'm going to do is go to, I know there's more on them, but I like to go to my own website here, go to my blog, and I'm going to search for calendar. There it is. And then there's a block, and all I'm going to do is just copy paste this code. So I'm going to go into my data view here, okay, and then hit that new table button, and there we go. Add a date table to my data model. Now I need to replace this. We don't have fact sales this time. I have financials. So now we set things up, right? So now I got both these required tables in here. Let me make sure that the relationship is set up. So I'm just going to make sure that I drag date to date. I set up this one-to-many relationship, and there we go. So here, I'm going to go ahead and put my years in a slicer and slice this on. Let me put this in a drop down. Slice it on 2014. And I'm going to go ahead, take my month names, which obviously are sorted alphabetically right now. So let me go into my month name menu and sort this by the month. I'll turn this into some kind of chart. behind the chart. And now I'm just going to take my sales number here. So now we got that one visual. So we had this up before, but we want to toggle, right? We don't just want to see sales month sec. We also want to be able to see this year to date and see the month over month delta. So now I first just want to make sure that you understand how you're going to do this without Tabular Editor, right? I first got to make you aware of the problem before I'm going to go into the solution. So how would you solve this? Well, we need measures, right? Well, this will be an implicit measure, so we're definitely not going to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and just create a new measure out of here, saying give me the sum of the sales equals, make it a bit bigger. The sales price makes more sense. Here we go. So I need that measure. So we replace the implicit one by the explicit one. And let me go ahead and add a new measure. Give me the sales y to d. Oh, fat fingers. Sales y to d equals. So we're going to use calculate. Use our measure, but now say dates y to d. And paste it up on the date column in my calendar table. And last but not least, then we also want to do a month on month. So let me just add that, the DEX measure for a month on month number equals calculate, take that same measure. Month, paste it from the date again, and let's make sure that we take the sum of sales and then we deduct the sum of sales in the previous month. Okay, so that should give us our month on month. Now what we need to do, and for people that do not have access to external tools, I mean, this is how you're going to have to do that, right? So you take your sum of sales. So we need to take that month on month measure in here and somehow make sure that we're going to be able to toggle between the two. So either you're going to use, let me go ahead and open up my view menu and show you the bookmarks in the selection pane. Okay, so you're going to create this visual. Let me just make a copy of this visual and then add the year to date measure in there. So you're going to make sure that you create two bookmarks. So let me put one on top of the next. So I were to hide this one. So all we got in our view right now is the month on month. So I'm going to record that as a bookmark. And we're going to do the opposite. And then add one saying Y to D. Okay, so this would work, right? Now we have two bookmarks. And so I can just add two buttons here and assign both of these bookmarks to a button. And then my user will be able to toggle between the two. However, if you got many different metrics and many different time periods that you want to present, right? If you don't only have month on month and year to date, but you got a year to date versus year to date previous year, this month versus same month previous year, and that might add up. So you're going to have a long list of bookmarks. So this is, I mean, it works, but I wouldn't recommend it for, if you got loads and loads of measures and metrics, then I wouldn't recommend doing it this way. So then what do we do? Well, the second option here is to use a disconnected table. That's what it's called. I didn't come up with the name, but that makes sense though. Let me get rid of the bookmarks before I do. So I'm going to add a disconnected table, and a disconnected table is a table that is disconnected. Okay, so let me start off by adding that to the model. So I'm just going to go into my home, enter data. And we're going to say period. Month on month, Y, D. This will be my time intel. So I'm going to use that column here that I've created, so that table, and I'm going to make sure that I do not connect this table, so it's disconnected. So use that column. Here we go. Turn that into a slicer. Obviously, it's not going to do anything just yet. I'd have to fire this up. So we have to, again, add an additional measure here. sales measure equals. So what we need to do is say if the selected value, so if the user selected a value in that time intelligence and the table I just created, and in that column selects month on month, if that is the selection, right, then we just want to have the month on month returns. If not, what we want to have is the YTD number. So this is now the measure that I do want to use. So let me replace it. And now we can just toggle between the two. The thing though is, so this again, this is an alternative and it would work. But again, and I recently had to do this. I built a model with a client of mine a couple of years ago, and I literally ended up with a couple hundred measures. Then I took that measure, used Tabular Editor, and reduced that to about 40 or 50 or so. Okay, so how did I do that? Let me go ahead and remove the measures that I just created. We don't need those anymore. Remove this guy. And then we're going to go into actually go into Tabular Editor, but I just want to make sure that you have that background, right? So this we can let go of now. Because I would have to do the same thing, right? I would have to keep on going because I also want to toggle between two different metrics. So I need to use two measures and then one to switch between the two. And then I need another measure to switch between the metrics and the time intelligence one. So you're going to keep on adding measures to your model. Okay, so in delete from model. Indeed, in the external tools part of the ribbon here, what I can do here, go ahead. If you've downloaded Tabular Editor, it's just going to appear here, right? The latest version of Tabular Editor is just going to appear here. Same goes for all other external tools. But we're going to start off by Tabular Editor right now. Here we go. So this is it. This is my Tabular Editor screen. There's a couple of things that I want to show. Yes. First off, scripting of measures in C#. So C# together with Java are very commonly used programming language, and we can use C# here to program measure creation. Okay, so if you got to write loads and loads and loads of measures, that might add up to a lot of manual work. And then there's a way in which we can optimize that measure creating by using this functionality here. So let me go ahead and show you here. Go to my useful script snippet. So this is some code, C# code, and let's look at the top one here. So we have a bit of C# code, and I can use that to create a sum measure for every currently selected column. And then I can have the column hidden. So I can just copy paste all of this. So just copy paste it and then bring that back into the Tabular Editor. So I need to go into advanced scripting, paste the code. So I can run the code either by hitting play or by F5. But what I do need to do is say this again creates a sum measure for every currently selected column. I have to make sure that I select columns. Okay, so I want to have a sum measure for units sold. I want to have sales price, discount, sales, cost of goods sold. Just coming up with a few. Okay, so I selected those columns. Now I'm going to hit play. There you go. All of them have been created. Here in Tabular Editor, it has not been processed into Power BI yet. What we need to do is make sure that we save this here, and it will get saved in the model. Okay. So here's this button, save. Control S does the same thing. So now they're saved, and let's have a look in Power BI. And then here they all are. So that was a fast way to create a whole lot of measures. But we don't end there. We don't end there because we got more, right? We got more. So going back here, we have a C# script that is going to create a total year-to-date measure for every selected measure. So what does that do? Well, let me copy paste it. Here. This. So let me select these measures here. All of them in one go. I held down Shift, and that allows for selecting all of these measures in one go. I'm going to paste that C# code and run it. There we go. Year-to-date measure. So that is an outrageously fast way of creating those measures. So let me just Control S, save, have a look in Power BI. Oh, I do get some errors. I don't know why yet, but we'll look into that. Oh, we do get to see the issue here. Ah, cannot find the table date. So let me let go of them again. Delete. Yes, I'm sure. So here, apparently this C# code here uses date. I do not have date. What I got is here dim calendar, right? So let me replace that. Select these measures again, run this code, and now what do we have? Probably misspelled it again, somehow. Dim calendar date. But here, so this is the way in which you can leverage your C# in order to create loads and loads of measures extremely fast. Okay, so this is a way of becoming more productive when it comes to creating your measures. Okay, so that's as far as scripting of your measures in C# goes. Then copy or paste multiple measures. Yeah, so in Power BI, as you know, if I want to copy paste a measure, there is no copy paste, right? I cannot do that. If I want to copy paste a measure, I would have to copy the code, add a new measure, and then paste the code in that new measure. And if I want to copy, if I just want to use a measure as a starting point for 10 other measures, I would have to do that 10 times. So here in let me just remove them again. So what I can do here, this works extremely fast. I'm not processing whatever I'm doing here in Tabular Editor doesn't get processed in the model. Okay, I only do this here in Tabular Editor, and only if I hit that save button are my changes actually going to get processed in the model, in the tabular model. So what I need to do here, as fast as this, I can just select all of them. So I held down Shift and then down arrow, and just delete, and I can delete. Right, so that works. So that kind of stuff, right? So, and if I now want to say, well, I need another measure because I also want to have a measure for, let's say, financials for the sale price again. So as you can see, these are grayed out, right? So that means that they are hidden. Okay, so which we can also see that, I mean, the code took care of that. That first C# code that I had took care of that. So now I only have a sum of sales measure left. So if I do want to have another measure, an additional measure here for my month-on-month sales, okay, so what I can do here, I recorded a couple of these samples. So I just took these here under this on this website, right? I took a couple of these snippets here and recorded them. Now that is an option. You can save a C# sample and use it in the future, right? So here what we got, I got a few of them, so they're called custom actions. So what I can do now is I can just select any column here, say for instance cost of goods sold. Let me take this out of there and get the sum measure runs in here, hit play. It's got to run this code, and there we go. So this I added a sum of cost of goods sold to my model. There goes. So this works, right? Copying, pasting, all that stuff. You can just select a couple of them, and or if you want to copy a couple of measures from one model to the next, I mean, you open up the Tabular Editor twice, and you'll be able to do that as well. And at a lightning speed. This is so much faster because, if you got an issue working in Power BI, if you got many measures, things are going to get slow, right? Writing your measures and creating your measures, and you don't have that issue here in Tabular Editor. So sometimes people do ask me, like, why would you not use Tabular Editor? Well, the honest answer there is, if you're a newbie, if you're really new to Power BI, first make sure that you understand Power BI, and then once you bump into these issues that you're going to run into if you're designing and developing larger models, then you're going to move towards Tabular Editor. See dependencies of a measure. Yeah, so this sum of cost of goods sold. Let me also create a year-to-date measure off of this sum of cost of goods sold. So advanced scripting samples. Oop. And here we go, total year to date. So I just get that C# here, hit play, and there we go, here it is. So here, because if you got many measures, what you'll usually do is you just have one basic measure and you'll have other measures built off of that basic one. And you might continue that. So you have a chain of measures and sometimes you just want to audit that chain. Just get a good feel for what is it exactly that's going on in my model. So here, what I'm able to do is going to show dependencies. And then I can see the objects that depend on a measure, which is correct, right? So I have the sum of cost of goods sold. I just use this code to create the sum of cost of goods sold year to date. So that makes sense. And the other way, going in the other direction, the sum of cost of goods sold is indeed based upon my financials table. And then here I can see the actual column used. So this helps in auditing, helps in finding that trail, right? That measure trail that you have ongoing in your Power BI model. Yes. Formatting. So indeed here what we've got is if you got a measure. Let me just go into the, well, let me use indeed the calendar table. Here, this is available. And by this, I mean the DAX. Formatter. You can hardly see it, but this is the DAX formatter, right? So we just have that available here. So if I'm going to go ahead and select this, it's going to format or format it short lines, whatever you prefer. Okay, so we have that available here. So what I usually do, instead of going from Power BI to the DAXformatter.com and back, I just make sure that I got the Tabular Editor running, format my code here, and then it'll just get processed in Power BI. Okay, so that we have the Tabular Editor available here as well. Undo button, yeah, once again here in Power BI, I have a measure, and I accidentally, or deliberately right now, but accidentally delete a measure. And now I want to undo. Well, it doesn't work. Okay. Undo button. Yeah, there is an undo button, but it's only going to help you out if you did something on your report, right? You deleted a visual or did something else on your report which you want to undo. Then undo works, but not if you've been messing around with your measures. It won't work. It will though here. So I delete a measure here. Make sure that we yes, here. So I delete a measure here. Then you Control Z or hit undo, the same thing, but that will be back. So that works better, right? You've got all these functionalities that you would normally expect to be available in Power BI that you'll find in all sorts of other applications. You'll all find those just work here in the Tabular Editor.
Hey, Marnie, I've got a couple of questions in the Q&A which have just popped up, which actually to do with creating the measures. Often we'll create measures in a specific table or put them into, we'll group them once we've created them for logical reasons. Is there a way to specify the table that we create the measures in, or is it just happens to be, I'm not going to say random, but just where we, how does that work?
So if you want to create a new measure out of a table, that measure is simply going to be added to that specific table. So that's how that works. And then here your grouping can also be done here. Here's your display folder, right? So you can also determine the display folders of your measures. Very similar to how that would work here in Power BI in a model view. Okay, that cannot be done here, but in a model view here, I'm also able to specify a display folder.
Brilliant. I think that answers both Joe's and Francisco's questions. So thank you for that. Brilliant answers, and thanks for the demo on that.
Sure, cool, thanks. Calculation groups, yes. So this is if you're running Power BI below the hood, you're actually running SQL Server Analysis Services, right? That is the technology that you're using if you're using Power BI. In Analysis Services, there is certain technology available, such as, or I should say functionality available, that you cannot access out of Power BI. you cannot access out of Power BI. So we have calculation groups and object level security. I'm going to start off by calculation groups. So it is available if you're running Power BI. You have analysis services. So, you know, you got calculation groups available. However, using Power BI, the interface doesn't allow for accessing the calculation groups. So you can use calculation groups out of Tabular Editor. And that is what we're going to do now. Okay, so let me go ahead and get started on that. And that is also the example that I started off by, right? That I showed you how to toggle between different measures and between different time intelligence periods. So we have to start off by adding one. Create a new calculation group. Here we go. So let's start off by our time intelligence. Oh, I already have a, should we delete that table? Let me just go ahead and do that because we don't need it here anymore. Delete from model. There we go. Oh. Yeah, we do want to have that. Okay. New calculation group. Just close this for a sec. Sometimes you gotta, right? Get this going again. Here we go. So now let me add that calculation group and call it time intel. Here we go. And so I'm going to add a new calculation item to this calculation group. And let's start off by doing the year to date. Now the thing is though, so I can here assign a specific DAX measure to this here calculation item, and I want to have this dynamic. I don't want to for the user to it shouldn't matter which metric, whether you're using sales or cost of goods sold or revenue, or it shouldn't matter which measure you're using. You should always be able to get the year to date number. So what we're going to do, well, we need to use calculate, right, in order to determine a year to date number. As you can tell, there's no there's no IntelliSense available here, so you need to have a little bit of text experience before you really can start off writing your measures here. But what we're going to do is I'm going to use this formula here called selected measure. So that is the measure that is selected. Okay? So it doesn't matter. I can also here write sales, but then it would be static. I want to have this dynamic. Okay? So I use selected measure, and then we're just going to say dates Y to D. And based it on our calendar table, and then the date column. Oh, here we go. And again, format this. So this is for us a way to see if our code is okay. It is. Like short lines, prefer that slightly. So now we have a calculation item being a year to date. So let me rename this into period, because this is the name that we're going to be seeing later on. So add another calculation item, and this we're going to call month on month. Okay. So month on month, that will be the selected measure minus calculate selected measure previous month. Let's get my date in here. F6, okay, Control F6. Oh, didn't need to do that. Go back here. There we go. So Control F6 is simply the short line, so it just does that DAX formatting. So now I got both calculation items in here. And so what can we do using those? Well, I'm gonna save this. Let go of this. So I save this to Power BI. Now we first need to refresh our data set. Okay, calculation groups need to be manually refreshed, so that's exactly what we're going to do. I'm going to add another R visual, add a table. A table, yep. And so what I'm going to do is add the month names, and then we need to use any measure, doesn't matter which one. So let me turn this into a chart, so any kind of chart. And now we're going to take that calculation group. So we can see now that it's just a table that has been added to our model, right? That is the way this appears to us. And so we can just use this as we could use any table, any column out of any table to add a slicer to this. And there you go. So now we can toggle between the two, and I do not need all those measures here anymore, right? So if I were to take another measure in here, instead of sum of sales, use another one, this still works. So that works better. That's a lot better. That's a lot better. Far less measures required. Okay, so but we're not done yet. What we can also do here is continue this and add another calculation group. And this is going to be our metrics. So here, that name here be metric. Okay, so I call this that is the name again. That's the name that's going to appear in Power BI. So under metrics, I'm going to create a new calculation item. And this is going to be my sales measure. And let me add a calculation item to here. And that is going to be my cost of goods sold. So sales would simply be the measure for my sales. So all I do is drag and drop that here. And that's all I need to do. Cost of goods sold, same thing. Drag and drop, and we're done. Okay, so now I got these two calculation items. I hit Control S or select this button here to make sure that I have my model updated. Again, I need to refresh. So let's go ahead and do that in order to get this to work. So add the metrics here in a slicer, and there we go. Now we should be able to toggle between, right? So this works. So can you imagine the amount of measures that you do not have to write if you can use these calculation groups here? Okay, so there's one more thing that I need to show. Dynamic format strings. Yes. So let me bring in one more table here, a dimension country. And after I brought it in, I'll just quickly show you what it is. So if you load this into Power BI. Here we go. So this table, all it is, so I got the name of the country, the format of their currency, and the exchange rate. So what can we use this table? How can we use this table here? So what we're going to do, go back into Tabular Editor, and we're going to add another calculation group. So create a new calculation group, and this is going to be our currency. So we got one currency, a new item being our, let's say, I mean, I am from Europe, right? So I'm from the continent. Euros are like my local currency. So I got euros, and then we have another one, and that will be a new calculation item. And so that will be the local currency. So just imagine that all these sales, let me just slice this by country this time. In country, instead of by month name, we're going to slice this by country. Now we got this. Just imagine that these are all local currencies, right? This is what we've been supplied with. All we got here are these local currencies, and we want to convert local currencies to euros. So what are we going to do? Well, first off, for that local currency, well, we don't have to do much, right? Do we? We just take the selected measure. We just get to see the selected measure. But here for that euro measure, what we're going to do, so we want to go by the table, that financials table, row by row. So I use a sumx in order to go by the table row by row. And for every row in that table, we want to divide the, and let's take the selected measure, and then divide that by the related. So we're going to look into a related table, and that would be our country. And what we're going to do in the country is look up that exchange rate. That's what we're going to divide the currency by. This should work. Okay, so now let me save this, Control S, and yet another calculation group, which I need to refresh. And let me give this a try, see if this works. Currencies. So we got both currencies. And that works, right? So you would expect that this to happen, right? Like €1 is about 100 Russian rubles. Same goes for the Indian currency. So that makes sense. So this does its job. But we want to do one more thing, and that is also use these currency symbols. So let me turn this into a table for now. As you can tell, there aren't any. So what we gotta do is, I mean, I did not bring this in without a good reason. We have the format, so the number formatting for every country. So we need to use that somehow. So we're gonna go back into Tabular Editor. And here, under local currency, what we're gonna do is not go into the expression, okay, but now we wanna go into the format string expression. So we can actually use some DEX code in order to do that. Okay, so that's going to be the selected value. So in the current filter context, visible selected value of the, and then we take the country, dim country, here you go, and we take that format. Selected value, and then we take the format. Let's see what this does. So now I'm expecting to see local currencies. If I were to select local currencies, and yes, that's correct, right? I got the number in millions now, which I wanted to do, but I get the local currency symbols. The thing though is, if I set this to local, then this total doesn't make any sense. I mean, you cannot add different currencies. So what we can do then, go back into the Tabular Editor here and say, well, if has one value, that country. So if it only has one value visible in the filter context, then we know that we do want to see this number, right? But if you're not, if it has one value, yeah. So if that is correct, then we do want to see we want to obtain this here selected value. But if not, we're at the total line, and then we just want to have a blank returned. So let's see what that does. Save this. I shouldn't do that at the format string expression, of course, but just at the expression. Okay, so let me just, here we go. Go to the selected value. Go to the, not the format, I was in the format string expression, see, so I need to do this in the expression. If these has one value of the country, we're not at the total line, so we just want to see the selected measure. But if we're at the total line, we just want to see a blank. Now see what we have. That works. So we lose that total number here, which is irrelevant, thus is a meaningless number. And then last but not least, let's go into the euro. And so here what we want to do is have the expression and the format string expression. So we just need to enter that here. So it's 0. Like that, I think. Let me set this to euros. And there you go. Now that works. And it would also work if I use this in a visual. Okay, so I do need to add date labels though. I need to make sure that I turn this on. So now here we get to see these figures here in euros because they are all euros, local currencies. There you go, local currencies. So this could avoid a lot of confusion when it comes to, you know, having to use this dashboard. You don't have to say somewhere, you know, if you select this, then you get local currencies. No, it makes it clear straight away. And I think that that's about it. Well, there's more to the Tabular Editor. Yeah, there's far more that I'd be able to just discuss here in 45 minutes or a little under an hour. Best practice analyzer, that's also functionality available. So, you know, there are all sorts of best practices that you can use if you're building a tabular model, like a Power BI model. So you can analyze whether you've been applying those best practices. Object level security, similar to row level security, but not the same thing, obviously, because then it would have been the same thing. Object level security, and Tabular Editor 3 is about to get released, which is a commercial tool. And that's all I had to say about all of this.
That's brilliant. That was a bit of a quote actually from Forrest Gump, wasn't it? That's all I've got to say about that. That's when the microphone goes back on and he's speaking at that rally, that Vietnam rally in Washington
DC. That's correct. Yeah.
Brilliant.
That's all I have to say about that. Unless there are any more questions, though.
Yeah. One question which I'll read out to you, and it's from John K. So, dynamic formatting. Full stop. Is there a way to dynamically change the precision of units or numbers? For example, if all the amounts are in a visual of billions of dollars, I don't care about millions. So we want things formatted as, X billion. If all the values are millions, then we want them as X million, etc., etc. You kind of get the view. So it's kind of dynamic formatting based upon the.
Sure. Let me just quickly show you. Yeah.
Of the numbers.
If I were to remove these, Control S now, here euros, get to see all of these numbers, right? Local, 15.4 million euros. So yes, you could do that. I'm doing it. So yeah.
Yeah, seems fair to me that that can be done then. Brilliant.
Marnie, a question from me, if that's all right. So this obviously seems like quite an efficient way to do these sorts of measures. Have you found any sort of, I guess, negative points of doing it this way?
Well, I mean, you do not have IntelliSense, and that is an issue that makes. I mean, I love IntelliSense when I'm writing my Power BI and measures within Power BI, and that I do miss. So yeah, that is one of the issues. And there's a couple more things, but now that there's the commercial tool, and so the inventor, if you will, Daniel Ottiker, I think his name is. He's a Danish guy, and so he's about to release Tabular Editor version 3. So this is version 2 that I just showed you. Version 3 is going to have IntelliSense and a lot of other functionality. However, that is no longer going to be a free tool. Like the one that we have, like the one that I have right now. What he did promise, though, is that Tabular Editor 2 is still going to be around and still going to be free. So Tabular Editor 3 is not going to replace Tabular Editor 2. So you can keep on using this forever. You will never have to pay for it.
Okay, so Tabular Editor 3 is not free.
It's not.
That's what I heard. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
No, thanks for that. Yeah, that was a really good session, and yeah, like Marnie said, this is just the tip of the iceberg for Tabular Editor. There's so much more you can delve into with that, but these are the sorts of tools that can help you, with your everyday development of Power BI and keeping your focus or your end focus of your end goal in terms of the data model in mind, will help you when it comes to designing these sorts of tabular reports from scratch.